Welcome to the first online sew-along. This is pretty exciting. Since we're not together, welcome to my studio. It is a mess, it's cluttered, so hopefully by the end of all of this it'll be in a little bit better shape for you. I'm not gonna promise that though. So by now, hopefully you have found the information that the introduction, which had all the fabric requirements and the schedule. All right. If you haven't seen that, that is in the files of the Facebook group. And to get to that, you go to the Friends of the Chestnut Ridge, which obviously you're here. Look underneath that on the left side, you'll see files, and there will be PDF documents to download. That will have the fabric requirements, the introduction. The introduction was also listed just in a post. Also, we'll have this video. When you want to see the videos, we'll have the video here. We're going to talk about the cutting today first, and then there'll be another one a little bit later here today on block number 1, construction. There will also be the file to print out for you for the pattern part for that week. So you have the separate paper that had your fabric requirement based on the size that you were planning on making along with us. The first thing that you're going to see also after that in the cutting instructions is a piece that looks like this. So what I typically do when I'm making something is I make myself a chart, because sometimes it's easy to get confused on which fabric is accent 1, accent 2, especially when patterns are written where it has the color. It's written to be the sample. For instance, it'll say accent 1 is lavender. And so throughout the rest of the pattern, they refer to it as lavender. And that's kind of confusing. So what this paper does, it's 2 things. The top section here, I put little swatches on my fabric. We're actually going to separate this. We're going to cut this. We're going to put our swatches. And for this sample, this is what I have. My background fabric, this is going to be a short version. So my background fabric, accent 1, 2, and 3. And I have that written that way and listed them as lavender, purple, and green. But this way you can verify and you know exactly what it is. The bottom half of this is something that keeps me organized. You have in a separate file the cutting instructions. Now I know you can't read this here. You'll have to go to the file and download it. But there's a page for cutting the long version and a second page of cutting the short version. I like to do that so that it's separate, it's easy to follow along. And it's not simply cutting a strip and then cutting just the amount that you need for the short. There is a difference in the order that we cut. So what you'll do is, after you've separated this and you've done this, as you're cutting, you're going to have cut these apart. These are labels for everything that you cut. Now I'm going to be, because I just have to do it. If you've ever taken a class from me, you'll know that I tend to overdo things. I'm going to do a second version as well, a long version. These are the fabrics for that. Background, this is different because the background's it's actually a dark brown. Accent 1, accent 2, you'll notice I have 2 here, and then accent 3. The reason I have 2 is because on this next long version I do, my star is going to be this floral. And I'm actually going to fussy cut the center of the star, and then these will also be the star points. So the instructions, the cutting instructions include that in case you want to do that. Now you could also do that for the short version. It'll make sense once you read that. So it's easy to do. So I've separated the top, I've labeled everything. So what I've done, as I cut everything, each of the units then get labeled. Like these units are 2 and 6.5. So my stack of these that are all the same size from the background are all together. Now what else I did on these labels, I tell you what it is, I tell you what the size is, and then I also tell you where it's used. For instance, these are going to be used in block 1, and they're going to be used in the borders. Then there's an L, which refers to the long, and an S for short. So that's telling you how many units you need for each, the short or the long. What I like to do, is I circle whatever the version is I'm doing. I know that I'm doing the short version, but if I get distracted, don't come back for a day, a week, a month, who knows. I'll know which one I'm working with. And I did the same thing on these, for the long version. So I like to circle the version that I'm working on. So what I have for all of these, I have all of these pieces cut, and they're all labeled. So you can go see, you can see that the pieces are here. So all the background pieces, and then when you get to the 1 and the 2, it all makes sense. And it's easy. It makes it easy. I don't know if you've ever done this, but you cut, you get distracted, and then it's not labeled, and there's a piece maybe that's 3.5 by 3.5, and another one that's 3.25. And you have to measure it, because you just need to make sure that you're using the right one. So these are all, both of mine are labeled, and then they're set aside. When I attach these, I usually just use a piece of tape, because I'm going to be doing them right away. If you're concerned with the stickiness staying there, you can use painter's tape, or you can add pins. If you're going to use pins, just be careful. Or clips. A lot of people will use clover clips. That just makes it really nice and easy to keep everything together. Now, because I have 2 separate ones, I will only actually be working on one at a time. But what I will probably do is put each of these in their own like Ziploc bag, just to keep them apart and not mix. And that would be, if you can see in the back here, I've got the 2 versions. My patriotic one has a red. If I was working on that at the same time that I'm working on my long version here, I might confuse the reds. So that's the reason I tend to keep them separate. So you'll pull this out. I would suggest printing one, cutting it out, and using that as you are cutting all your pieces. Which brings up a point here. I know that these files are all going to be left in the Facebook group, but just to be safe, pull them up, download them, and then save them into a file on your computer. Now, you might think that you're only going to ever do this short version and you'll never do a long one, but actually the long one that I'm working on, the one that I'm going to make, is going to be a bed runner. It's not going to be a table runner, it's going to be a bed runner. So, you know, you might decide that you like it, or it's going to fit something perfectly. So if you save them on your computer, it's going to be easy for you to find it if you need to. So even though I had the labels printed and ready for you to go, I don't want you to think that you have to use that as you're cutting. There's a list here of what you're going to do and what you're going to cut. Now, what I am doing is I've got up here the version, and then it's going to tell you what the fabric is that you are cutting. Now, please cut in the order that it's given. The reason for that is I'm trying to give you the most efficient use of fabric. For instance, you can see here in this alternate block, you can see in the patriotic one here, if you like how I can point backwards, that center block there has a heart. All right, but you're cutting a 6.5 inch square out of the background fabric. On the short version, you're only cutting 1. On the long version, you're cutting 2. And you can see on the other one here that those 2 are blank. What I've done with those is I've embroidered a quilting design in there. So you're going to cut those, and you'll cut a 6.5 inch strip. Then you're going to cut the number of squares you want. Well, then you have the rest of that strip left. So why not use that efficiently? So it might make a little be a little confusing at first, but what I often do with a pattern is I will either use a pencil, and I just put a little check mark by everything that I am cutting, or I'll make a photocopy of it, just of the cutting section, and then I check mark that. Now, somebody told me once that she does this on her patterns. She uses a friction pen because when she's all done, if she's going to do it again, all she has to do is iron it, and the ink disappears. I thought that was genius. So that works well. So what I do is each piece, I will tell you what width of fabric. The WOF means width of fabric. That was in the introduction, but I want to remind you. So you'll cut a strip. You'll cut the piece you need that size, and then you'll cut smaller pieces. So just finish, just cut as you would turning your fabric, cutting, and then you might have to make 2 cuts. But you'll cut all the way through, then you'll cut your next strips, and it tells you how many strips. Now, with that in mind, you might find that you have a lot of excess fabric. I've done that for a couple reasons. One, especially with the long version, one, all of the accent fabrics have the same fabric amount listed. The reason for that is we might think that we're going to use yellow in one place, but then as we're cutting, we decide we want to use it in another. And so this way you have enough that you can easily swap those out. Second, and probably the most important reason for this, is the width of fabric is different. Now, I might be using something that's got 42 or even 43 inches, and you might have something that only has 40 or even 39 in some cases. So I'm making sure that you have enough that when we're doing a strip set, if I can get the 12 cuts that I need out of a strip set, you might only be able to get 10. So I needed to make sure that you had enough to get all the cuts you need. Plus, we're not together. Typically in a class, I can sort of watch what you're doing and make sure that you are cutting the correct sizes before you subcut. I really want you to be able to finish this without having to stop and purchase more fabric. So think about that when we're all done and you think that, wow, I have so much extra. And it wasn't just to get you to get extra fabric, of course. So when we're doing this, we're going to be following along. I'm going to put my little check mark, and I'm going to tell you, or you're going to put those aside, get them all ready. You're going to say, man, I did a great job picking all this fabric. So when we're done here with your cutting, we're going to get ready. You're going to go back, and then we're going to start piecing. And all of a sudden, we're going to be starting with the center block here, the easy block, the chain block, the one has a heart. And I'll talk about that in the third class. Remember, our schedule is this week, we're going to do cutting and block 1. Next week, we're going to do block 2, which is the star block. 3 is the borders. Now, they're not borders. What they are is they're border pieces, in essence, that are constructed differently, but we're adding them to the sides of the blocks. Then we're going to be putting blocks together. You can add an outside border if you choose. And we don't have the fabric listed for that, but you can. This is already 18 inches wide, so I'm not sure if you'd want to do that. In that third class also, we're going to talk about not only the border units, putting everything together, and we're going to touch on some of the quilting and some of the options. Like I mentioned in this one over here, I embroidered something in the open session, or the open area. And this one I have made the heart, and there's an applique there, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And then on the other ones here that I'm making, I'm probably going to just do some walking foot quilting to give you all kinds of ideas. So we'll go ahead and get started with your cutting, and each session there'll be the file with the information, and then there'll also be a video for you to watch, and hopefully that'll be helpful. If you have any questions as you're going along, I'll try to keep the Facebook group going. You can make comments in there, and I'll try to answer them as best as we can. So I'm excited to do this, and hope you are too, and I look forward to seeing all of your progress. You can post pictures in the Facebook group. That's awesome. I love seeing everybody's fabrics. It always gives me inspiration for a new quilt. So have fun. See you soon.